If you're trying to figure out how to bet on UFC fights using BetRivers Sportsbook, you're basically stepping into one of the most exciting and fast-moving parts of online sports betting. UFC fights are unpredictable, fast, and packed with different betting opportunities, and BetRivers makes it fairly simple for beginners to get started, even if they've never placed a sports bet before. Before anything else, it's important to understand what you're actually doing when you bet on UFC. You're not just picking a fighter you think will win, you're also choosing how they might win, when they might win, and sometimes even specific details about the fight, like whether it goes the distance or ends early. That's what makes UFC betting interesting, but also something you should approach carefully and responsibly. To start betting, you first need an account on BetRivers Sportsbook. You'll go to their official site, create an account, and provide the basic information required for verification. This usually includes your name, date of birth, location, and sometimes identity verification, depending on your region. Once your account is set up, you can log in and access the Sportsbook platform where all the betting options are available. After logging in, the next step is funding your account. BetRivers allows different deposit methods depending on your country or state, such as debit cards, bank transfers, or digital payment options. Once your funds are available, you're ready to explore UFC betting markets. Now let's talk about what you'll actually see when you go to a UFC event on the Sportsbook. UFC fights from Ultimate Fighting Championship are usually listed under MMA or combat sports. When you click on a specific fight card, you'll see a list of fights, and each fight will have different betting options attached to it. The most basic and common bet is the money line. This simply means you are picking which fighter you believe will win the fight. Each fighter will have odds next to their name. A negative number usually means that fighter is the favourite, while a positive number means they are the underdog. For beginners, moneyline betting is usually the easiest way to start because it only requires picking the winner, nothing more. But UFC betting doesn't stop there. One of the reasons people enjoy it so much is because of all the additional markets available. Another popular option is method of victory. This is where you try to predict how the fighter will win. For example, will they win by knockout, submission, or decision? This adds more challenge, but also increases potential payouts because it's harder to predict. Then you have round betting, which is where you try to predict in which round the fight will end. UFC fights can end in the first round with a quick knockout, or they can go all the way to a judge's decision after 3 or 5 rounds. If you think a fighter is a fast starter, you might pick an early round finish. If you think they are more technical and patient, you might expect a later round or decision. There are also prop bets, which are more specific and sometimes more creative. These can include things like whether the fight will go the distance, whether there will be a knockout in a specific round, or even stats-based predictions like significant strikes or takedowns, depending on the sportsbook offerings. BetRivers tends to update these markets closer to fight time, especially for big UFC cards. Once you've chosen the bet you want, you simply click on it. This adds it to your bet slip. Your bet slip is basically your shopping cart for bets. It will show your selection, the odds, and how much you want to wager. This is where you need to be careful and intentional. You enter the amount you want to bet, and the platform will show you your potential payout if your prediction is correct. Before confirming, always double check your selection. UFC fights can be confusing, especially if you're betting on multiple fights in one card. One wrong click can completely change your bet. Once you're sure, you confirm the wager and the bet is officially placed. One thing that makes BetRivers Sportsbook appealing for many users is the clean interface and live betting options. Live betting means you can place bets while the fight is happening. This is especially popular in UFC because momentum can shift very quickly. A fighter might start slow and then suddenly take control in the second round, and live odds will adjust in real time based on what is happening inside the cage. However, live betting is also where many beginners make rushed decisions. Because UFC fights are so fast, it's easy to react emotionally instead of logically. That's why it's important to slow down and understand what you're betting on instead of chasing momentum or panic betting. Another feature you might come across is cash out. Cash out allows you to settle your bet early before the fight is over. If your fighter is winning and you feel unsure about how the rest of the fight will go, you might choose to cash out and secure a smaller profit or reduce your loss. It sounds tempting, but it should be used carefully because the sportsbook usually adjusts cash out values in their favour. When you're exploring UFC betting on BetRivers, you'll also notice how much research actually matters. Unlike random guessing, successful betting usually involves understanding fighters' styles. Some fighters are strong strikers, others are grapplers, and some are very defensive and tend to win by decision. If a striker faces a grappler, the entire fight dynamic changes. That's why watching previous fights or reading fighter stats can help you make better decisions. You should also pay attention to fight conditions. Weight class changes, short notice replacements, injuries, and even travel schedules can affect performance. For example, a fighter stepping in on short notice might not be fully prepared, even if they are talented. These small details often influence the outcome more than people expect. One thing many beginners overlook is bankroll management. This simply means deciding how much money you are willing to use for betting overall and not going beyond that. It's easy to get caught up in UFC excitement, especially during big events, but setting limits helps you avoid unnecessary losses. Many experienced bettors only risk a small percentage of their total bankroll on each fight. It's also important to understand that no bet is guaranteed. Even the most favoured fighter can lose in seconds with one clean strike. That unpredictability is what makes UFC exciting, but it also means you should never treat betting as a sure way to make money. It should be approached as entertainment first, not income. As you continue using BetRivers Sportsbook, you'll start to notice patterns in how odds move before fights. Odds can shift based on public betting trends, expert predictions, or last-minute news. Learning how to read these movements can give you a better sense of how the market views each fight. Some users also like to build multi-fight parlays, where they combine multiple UFC picks into one bet for a higher payout. While this can look attractive, it is also much harder to win because every selection must be correct. Parlays increase risk significantly, so they should be used cautiously, especially by beginners. At the end of the day, betting on UFC through BetRivers is about understanding the sport, using the tools available on the platform, and making informed decisions instead of emotional ones. The platform gives you access to all the major UFC markets, live betting features, and easy bet tracking, but your results depend on how well you understand the fights themselves. If you approach it slowly, learn how fighters perform, and avoid rushing your decisions, you'll have a much better experience overall. And whether you're betting on a main event, championship fight, or a smaller fight card, the same principles always apply. Research, discipline, and control. Just remember to always stay responsible with your betting activity. Set limits, take breaks when needed, and never wager more than you can afford to lose. UFC betting is meant to enhance the excitement of watching fights, not create pressure or stress. Once you understand how everything works, placing a UFC bet becomes straightforward. You log in, choose your fight, pick your outcome, set your stake, and confirm. Everything else is about learning and improving your understanding over time. That's the full beginner-friendly breakdown of how to bet on UFC fights using BetRivers Sportsbook, from setting up your account to placing your first wager and understanding the different betting markets available.